rest of the holiday season. We'll follow our agenda tonight, which is our custom. Beginning with the special meeting, we have 4 items on that agenda. As many of you know, the town of Edenton makes financial contributions to various organizations in our region, and in some cases to organizations that affect us but are not directly in our region, as is the case for our guest being with us tonight. There's a U.S. Highway 17 Association whose mission is to make U.S. Highway 17 from Virginia border to the South Carolina border first-class 4-lane highway. It's one of the great road challenges left in America, I guess, right, Mark? But yeah. We've been very fortunate over the last several years to have Mark Finlayson head up the organization, and quite a bit of what we travel over now has been the result of his hard work, so we've invited him back to address our audience and the council tonight, sir, and we welcome you. Look forward to your report.
Very kind. Thank you, Mayor. I warned Anne Marie that I'm technologically challenged, so we'll see if I can make this work. Okay. In your packet, you will have a small version of the PowerPoint for your convenience to make notes. But let me say before I get started how much I appreciate being invited back again to Edenton. It's always good to be here with friends and supporters and folks who've been engaged in this effort for a long time. Mayor Vaughn has been involved through the regional alliance on transportation issues, and Steve Biggs, my old friend, has been involved through economic development for many years. But it's taken that kind of collaboration and partnership to make this effort successful, and Edenton's been in the forefront of our support and leadership for a long time, and I greatly appreciate being here. In fact, Edenton was recently host to the wonderful and I think significant unveiling of the future Interstate 87 sign. On your handout, you'll see the actual picture of the sign. Apparently, I can't crack the code for that photograph that the state of North Carolina sent me, so it didn't appear on the screen, but it does appear on your handout. It was a great day. It was perfect weather. I guess y'all ordered that up, especially for the governor and the Secretary of Transportation. Malcolm Fearing, Division 1 board member, was here. Many of you in this room were here. It was a terrific turnout, and I was delighted to have been invited and to be a part of it. And as you'll notice, if you've driven along US 17, the future Interstate 87 signs are now up, and you'll see them as you drive along. I just saw one indeed in Bertie County before it got too dark. But we'll talk more in a minute about what this unveiling signifies, but it was certainly a great day and one that we should enjoy, and appreciate the hospitality of the town of Edenton to make it such a wonderful occasion. As the mayor said, we've been engaged in this work now for quite some time. Just as a reminder, the 17 organization was actually incorporated in 1975, but for a long time it was ad hoc and voluntary, and only in 2006 did some of the local governments in the corridor decide to get serious about the advocacy and be more proactive in what we were doing. And I was fortunate enough to have been asked to play a role in this work at that time. And we were given a 3-year monetary commitment to see what we could accomplish. And I'm very proud to tell you that we're now entering our 11th year doing this work. And over that time, there's been $1.3 billion invested on 11 projects along the corridor. And we were able to persuade DOT to invest over $360 million in our projects on the State Transportation Improvement Program, the STIP, that had previously been unfunded. So it's a significant investment. We're very proud of the work we've done. We look forward to more years of success. These are some of the projects that have opened to traffic since we've been doing this work in 2006. What we want to achieve is the highest possible quality of a facility that we can get. The future interstate kind of speaks for itself because that will be interstate quality from Williamston to Hampton Roads. But for the rest of US 17 south of Williamston, we want at least a 4-lane divided highway with as much control of access as we can possibly get. At the very least, we require 4 lanes instead of 2, and with access limited, as few at-grade crossings for safety reasons as we can possibly get. But you'll notice that there are many segments of the road now that make transportation better for Eastern North Carolina and improve commerce and improve the quality of life. There's still work to do, of course. These are some of the projects that we still need to achieve. Most notably, closest to here, Washington to Williamston. Not a particularly expensive project as transportation projects go, but one that needs to get done because it's what we would consider to be shovel ready. It was to have been part of Governor McCrory's bond package before the General Assembly removed the transportation projects from the bond. I'm still optimistic that we can get it done. In fact, I'm more optimistic because of the I-87 initiative from Williamston North than I was before, because it just makes too much sense to me to link US 264 in Washington to the interstate by improving that last 10 miles between Washington and Williamston. We need another $608 million approximately in today's dollars to build those projects. Of course, the price goes up as the years go by. We're effective in our advocacy because we do partner and collaborate with a lot of agencies and entities, most particularly our local government partners like y'all, but also with the congressional delegation, the legislative delegation in Raleigh, and the groups you see on the slide. Want to give a particular shout out to your RPO, Director Angela Welsh and the Albemarle RPO. They do a great job, and we appreciate that planning leadership that takes place all up and down the corridor. It's hard work scoring these projects, and it's important that local government leaders participate in that process. In fact, it's really a thankless job, which we'll refer to here in a minute, but the statewide tier projects, as you undoubtedly know, over the last 2 cycles of the STIP have gone almost entirely to MPO projects. There's really been only 2 RPO projects that have made funding in the statewide tier. So the RPOs work really hard, and they haven't had much to celebrate with that statewide tier of projects. We're going to try to get them a little help in the coming years. NCGO is up there. That's the statewide transportation advocacy organization. I chair that organization. I got involved with NCGO shortly after I took on the US 17 work because there was no rural voice on that organization, and I felt the need to be at the table when other organizations like transit or rail or ports or urban focused organizations were talking about their transportation needs. I felt like we needed a voice, and happy now to be the chairman of that board. Some of the things we've accomplished at the federal level, we worked with the congressional delegation to authorize the future Interstate 87 designation in the FAST Act. That's the latest Federal Surface Transportation Act. It stands for Fix Our Aging Surface Transportation. And not only did the FAST Act designate future Interstate 87, it also designated future Interstate 42, which is US 70 from Raleigh to the port at Moorhead. and the extension of US 795 from Goldsboro south along what would be, I guess, NC 117 to where it runs into I-40 at Faison. So all three of those Eastern North Carolina future interstates were in the FAST Act. But more than that, by passing a 5-year Surface Transportation Act, Congress enabled all the state departments of transportation, including ours, to have more certainty about federal funding coming back to the states that will facilitate their planning. As you probably know, North Carolina collects 18 cents on every gallon of gas, which is the federal gas tax, and we remit that to Washington, and they take a little off the top for administrative costs, and they send us back about 93%. North Carolina receives about $1 billion in round numbers from the federal government every year for transportation, out of about a $4.2 billion total budget. So North Carolina raises about 3 times as much revenue at the state level than we get from Washington. But it's not an insignificant amount, and by understanding that that $1 billion a year is coming from Washington, it makes the planning process for new construction projects that much easier. At the state level, we've incorporated Division 4 into our standing committee at the Board of Transportation. When we expanded our organization to include US 64 by virtue of the future Interstate 87, we not only brought in Nash County and Edgecombe County and some of the municipalities along that corridor, but we also brought Division 4 board member Gus Tullis and Division 4 Chief Engineer Tim Little into our committee, and we get together twice a year in Raleigh with the 4 divisions from Eastern North Carolina, with the board members, with key staff from Raleigh and key staff on the ground in the divisions, and talk about planning, funding, and other issues important to our projects. At the very best of circumstances, it still takes about 10 years to conceive of a new highway project and then get to drive on it. Because you've got to do the planning, you've got to do the design, you've got to do the environmental permitting, you've got to acquire the right-of-way, and then you've got to build it. And so it takes a long time, and as you'll probably know, in Eastern North Carolina, it's very rarely the best of circumstances because we have a lot of challenges. So it takes a long time to build a road, and that collaboration in that meeting has helped us quite a lot. There's only one I-87 project in the current STIP, and that is improving parts of 17 on either side of the Chowan River Bridge up to interstate standards. So that's northern Bertie, southern Chowan, and that's about a $43 million project that will include widening the shoulders, widening the medians in some places, adding some safety features like the crash barriers in the median. Only about $13 million of the $43 million cost of the project is funded, so we still have work to do. Last session, we supported the General Assembly in their legislation to secure about $400 million more per year in recurring transportation funding. That was the reason the General Assembly took the transportation projects out of the bond. They said, we're going to give you more money for transportation through the regular process. So that's the good news. They removed the last of the transfers from transportation fund to the general fund. They raised some DMV fees to keep up with the inflation over time. And so they created this additional pot of dollars. The problem is it has to go through the normal STI, State Transportation Investments Law, to be allocated throughout the state. So almost all of that $400 million went to Forsyth County because that was the next big project in line at the statewide tier. So again, good news and bad news, but we're looking at the glass half full. So next steps, we want to work with the General Assembly to amend the STI law. And I think there's some sentiment to do it because it's pretty evident by looking at the statewide tier of projects, some 200 over the last 4 years, that the pendulum swung too far to the metropolitan places at the expense of the rural places. As I mentioned, in the first round of the STIP at the statewide level, there was only one RPO project funded, and that was in Boone, along, I guess, US 421. In this STIP draft that'll be approved by the Board of Transportation in December, there was only one RPO project, and that was the rail hub in Edgecombe County. So the RPOs haven't fared too well. Almost all of the projects are going to the metropolitan places by virtue of congestion mitigation being 30% weighted in the scoring process. So it trumps safety, it trumps economic development, it trumps freight movement, and all the other things that you would normally consider when deciding whether or not to build a road. We also need to work with DOT inside the transportation building to improve the prioritization and scoring process. Maybe we can adjust that 30% weight on congestion mitigation and try to get more scoring for economic development or safety, which would accrue to our benefit. We also want to work with the General Assembly to increase recurring funding for transportation. That $400 million the Assembly found at the last session was helpful. It's not nearly enough. We face about a $60 billion shortfall between now and 2040 just to keep up with the growing population in the state. We'll be, I guess, the 7th largest state in the country in the next 20 years. It will be as if everyone that lives now in the state of South Carolina packs up and moves here, about an additional 4 million people. So we've got to build a system that can support that kind of growth. I want to say a good word about Representative Steinberg. He and I spent a couple hours a month ago on his front porch talking about a good many things, but in particular tweaks to STI. And I think rural legislators like Representative Steinberg and Senator Smith Ingram are going to be very important. All the rural legislators are going to be very important as this issue gets debated. It was my pleasure to testify, I guess about 6 weeks ago, before the State House Select Committee on Transportation Planning and Funding, chaired by a fellow named John Torbett, Representative Torbett from Gaston County. And he and I have had a couple of good conversations about that, and he's going to lead the effort in the House on transportation, and I think he's amenable to some changes that could benefit rural places. We'll continue to work on that. Regionally, we want to support the planning work that goes on in our 6 RPOs and 3 MPOs that represent our corridors. We want to, if we can, reform the old regional RPO-MPO coalition that was chaired by Jacksonville Mayor Pro Tem Mike Lazzara. That committee existed up until the time the General Assembly passed STI in 2013, and then it went away. Mike Lazzara is now a board member on our association representing the city of Jacksonville, and he and I have had conversations about how we get that coalition back together, because I think it did some valuable work. I want to encourage all of you all and other representatives that you speak to from other communities to participate in the feasibility study that's now underway on the I-87 segment that would be what is now US 17 from Williamston to Hampton Roads. There have been a couple of preliminary meetings with the consultants doing that work, one in Williamston, one in Elizabeth City. But to the extent that you can provide local input on what your community's needs would be, or if there are any red flags you would see raised on a particular design or designated corridor, they need to know that, because they need to make good planning decisions. And they need to give us an accurate cost on what it would take to actually build the facility out to interstate standards. One thing I can say about our region that I think is important is that Eastern North Carolina, particularly the 17 corridor, represents the three largest economic drivers in the state. Agriculture, of course, the military is number 2, and then tourism is number 3. We have all those three things along the corridor. When you think about the Marine Corps installations along 17 in Craven and Onslow counties, the Coast Guard facility at Elizabeth City, big military presence here, one that we need to leverage. So this is really what we're all about. This is our purpose. We want to support adequate funding through improved STI legislation for the rural places. We want to support equitable scoring through the spot prioritization process inside the department. We want to expedite evaluation and investment in I-87 projects. We don't need the one in Bertie and Chowan to be the only one. And we're prepared to work with either administration, whichever it ends up being after the votes are all counted. We have good relationships with both, and we're willing to work with anybody to get it done. Most importantly, thanks to Edenton, thanks to our other partners, we speak with one voice. We've broadened our footprint to include more highway divisions, more congressional districts, more legislative districts, more communities. When we speak loudly for a common purpose, we can achieve great things. And I'm proud to say we have, and looking forward to doing more. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your attention, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mark. Council members have any questions?
Yes, sir.
Mark's presentation.
I do have, I suppose it's a question, comment. First, thank you very much for what you're doing for us. I've waited 64 years for 17 to be finished, and I'm patient, obviously, and I'm sure most of us are looking forward to it. Recently, we had an asset added to our community by the new road connecting Edenton with 64. I think that has a lot of asset value, but I must ask, what will it take for us to have that exit identified as an Edenton exit?
Well, I don't know the answer exactly, but I feel as if the Board of Transportation, the regional divisions would be supportive of that. I think signage is a lighter lift than some of the other questions they're asked, but I don't know the specifics of that exit or what you'd require, but I don't see that as insurmountable.
Well, it's extremely instrumental to us. The other exit definitely gets you to Edenton, but it's an 18-mile trip, not being, I dare say not anything bad about that exit and the route that you would take. It's very nice, but it's a roundabout kind of thing. There's really no, the new exit doesn't give us a faster route necessarily, but it's a direct route. It's a new road, it's an exit, and it's so much better for people that are just visiting our area. And we thrive, survive on retirement and tourism. It's such an asset sitting there, and you have to study the map to figure it out, and the maps aren't published. It makes no sense.
Well, let me inquire and see if I can get some information back to you, Mr. Quinn.
I'd sure appreciate it. I think the town would appreciate it. I know the town would appreciate it. We need it. It's a wonderful opportunity for us, and we're missing it. The money's been spent. Thank you.
I have one question. When do you think it'll be faster to go to Wilmington from Edenton by 17 than through Greenville?
Well, work is underway now in Jones County, which will make that 2-lane road 4-lane divided and bypass Maysville and Pollocksville.
Will it be just limited access, or is it going to be?
It's going to be controlled access on the bypasses and very limited access on the 4-lane between Maysville and Pollocksville. That will shave probably 10 minutes off your trip. The Hampstead bypass in Pender County had been unfunded, and the last step is now, as I understand it, going to be funded at the regional tier level, at least part of it. So that will get it back on the plan and enable them to go ahead and do the balance of the permitting for the entire project. So once Hampstead bypass is finished, I think you'll be able to save a half an hour between here and say Wrightsville Beach.
Yeah. Which is where I'm going.
That's great. That'll be great, too.
Yes, that's one of my favorite places too, so I'm looking forward to that myself.
Other questions or comments?
Mayor, I just want to comment again, serving on the board with Mark, he does an outstanding job, and he was right. When he goes to Raleigh, we all just kind of follow on his coattails, and he leads us in the right way, and then he turns around and goes, isn't that right? And we all nod our head like, yes, he's exactly right. That's what we want. So, Mark, thank you for all you do for us. We certainly appreciate not only 1764, but NC Go. I mean, people recognize you when you walk the halls, and we appreciate it.
You're kind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
We
you very
always
kindly.
look forward to your report, and we get a great return on our small investment with the organization, and
We're delighted to have
Keep
you
up the good
part of
work.
the team. Thank you so much.
our pleasure. Since Hurricane Matthew graced us with his presence, Chowan County, as you know, ultimately qualified for disaster loan relief through the U.S. Small Business Administration, and they've had a presence here in the county for a while now, since that announcement was made. And Tamim, is that correct, is with us tonight as the representative from SBA who has been working in our area, and he would just like to brief the council and our listeners with what has been going on through his office. And welcome, sir, and thank you for your assistance.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Honorable Council members, for having me here. I am Tamim Chaudhary, that's T-A-M-I-M, from the U.S. Small Business Administration. Basically, we have a presence here because of the devastating effects of Hurricane Matthew. As you all know, it has been declared as a presidential disaster. So once a presidential disaster has been declared, FEMA deploys its personnel, and so does SBA. We kind of follow FEMA. What SBA does, a little bit different from FEMA, is we offer low-interest, long-term loans to your non-farm businesses, nonprofits, homeowners, and renters. If anyone you know here has been affected by the hurricane, I would ask you to pass on this message. Please immediately register with FEMA. It's a very simple process. You have disasterassistance.gov or the phone number 1-800-621-FEMA. I have flyers right here if anyone's interested at the end of my presentation to pick these up. It's all for you. For all concerned parties regarding loans, this includes your businesses and nonprofits. There are 3 options to do this. You can go to sba.gov, call 1-800-659-2955 to apply over the phone, or simply go into one of our disaster recovery centers. You have customer service representatives right there ready to assist you. You have that live in-person assistance, which I think is very helpful. Starting off with businesses and nonprofit managers, no matter what your business size is, you can apply for an SBA loan. Loans may go up to $2 million. The interest rate may be as low as 4% for businesses, and for nonprofits as low as 2.62%. Now, the physical damages loans, that includes items such as real estate, inventory, equipment. We also have a separate loan category called a working capital loan for economic injuries. That can also go up to $2 million. People often ask me, what is a working capital loan for economic injuries? We like to use the example of having a hot dog stand up on a hill. Say your hot dog stand is just fine, nothing's happened to it, but none of your customers can get up to you. You have an economic injury, and that's where SBA comes in. Moving on to your homeowners, you may qualify for a disaster-related loans for your primary residence, and that may go up to $200,000. For renters and homeowners, both groups can qualify for loans up to $40,000 for personal property. Coming in here in North Carolina, I've noticed a lot of vehicle damages, and that's where that falls in. That's your personal property damage. These loans may be as low as 1.5%, and all of these loans that I've just been talking about, the repayment timeline is 30 years, can go up to 30 years. Now, we ask homeowners and renters to go ahead and apply for SBA loans, even if you don't think you may need it, because say Mr. John Smith has has damage to his home. Even if he's refused an SBA loan, we transfer John Smith's case to FEMA, and FEMA has this fund called Other Needs Assistance Program. FEMA looks into that to see that if this person would qualify for further assistance. So if you don't have that SBA loan application, you're kind of blocking your process to receive additional funds. We don't want you to do that. These loans, they don't have any application fees, and we think at this time, people sometimes ask, why even try for a loan? We think that this is a chance to fully recover. We've oftentimes seen that your grant money, the insurance settlement money, it's not enough. So to just fill in that gap, that's where these SBA loans come in. If you don't think you need the loan at the end of the day, you can always refuse it. If you think you need a part of it, you can always take a part of it. But at least consider it, because the deadline's coming up soon, and we don't want anyone to think that, oh, I could have qualified for that loan. Your physical damage loans, the deadline is January 9th. So that's basically why I'm here, to get the word out before it's January 9th, because afterwards, it's a little too late. You know, it's a federal rule. You can't really change these things. And for economic injury loans, your deadline is July 10, 2017. Thus far, SBA has approved over $50 million in loans to North Carolina survivors of Hurricane Matthew. Over 1,350 homes and businesses, they've received assistance, so they're basically on the road to recovery. We had a mobile disaster center right here in your John Holmes High School, and excuse me, a good number of applicants came in, and I think it's very helpful. I saw this lady myself. Maybe it took her half an hour. Not all of us are very computer literate nor financially savvy to just fill in this loan by ourselves. She had 3 of the customer service representatives, pretty much dressed like me, and within a half an hour's time, her loan was completed. And I think that's a great advantage. We go around these mobile disaster recovery centers, and we just halted those operations because we think we've spread out pretty much everywhere we need to. But if you know of anybody who wants that in-person assistance, I would ask them to go to FEMA.gov, type in the local address, and then the website will find out where the nearest disaster site is. Once again, I thank you for listening to me, and I thank Ms. Anna Marie for just having me here and giving me this nice little gift bag. It's very nice of her. I'm willing to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Tommy. Council members, does anybody have any questions of what the SBA is here to try to help us with?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I had a resident who has suffered flood waters in the house, and fortunately they've been able to temporarily relocate. They've registered with FEMA, and they've also registered with you all. They visited the mobile unit, but they were asking if there's any, and I know we can't quote you on it, but any timetable. You know, how long does it take for an application to be reviewed and approved? And
Whereas I can't speak for FEMA, for SBA, we try to do this within the 2 to 3 week timeline.
okay.
So within 2 to 3 weeks, if she hasn't heard, I would definitely give her one of these flyers because it's got our numbers. That's the customer service number. Even if it is within that 2 to 3 weeks, and she thinks that it shouldn't be taking this long, this way you call, you get an update. You know, if you're not, that's our quality check, if you ask me. If one is not really satisfied with, say, SBA, that, hey, I don't think you're very proactive, what have you, that's really the remedy for it. So I would definitely ask her to look into that.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, sir. In our notes, it was also pointed out that one of our colleagues, Councilman Dixon, was appointed by Governor McCrory to the Hurricane Recovery Task Force following Hurricane Matthew. And Sambo, you got anything you'd like to tell?
Yeah,
us
we've
about?
had regional meetings in Lumberton, Bedford, got one coming up in Greenville, Kinston. So they're all over the place. And so what happens in those meetings is people come and they tell, usually the governor's there, the chief of staff, the head of FEMA, who's from Tarboro, and I think they've been very helpful. There are 3 committees that they form. One is the Disaster Relief Fund. The second one is the Economic Development Strategy Fund, and the third one is the Planning and Building Sustainable Communities, which, guess what, I'm on that one. And so, it's been really eye-opening. I think that our committee needs a lot more work because no matter what committee you go into, it turns into a disaster relief committee. So, I mean, nobody's talking about how to build it back better or offering ways to help these towns, because there's some towns that are devastated that really have some big decisions to make. Because the way it works is the town has to decide, the municipality decides whether to take the buyout or not, and then individuals within the town can do that. And, that's really a big question for some municipalities. It's just a huge question. So, I think more resources need to go into that, helping them plan, having some creative architects look at things, and that's what I'm pushing for. I mean, that's what I'm hopeful that we'll do. They're trying to house people first, and there are a lot of people without housing. And then I've been pushing hard for try to get some CDBG money or some money to these communities for infrastructure. I mean, Eden needs some new infrastructure, and I think that's a good way to get that funding to come to places like this that have to deal with stormwater. So that's kind of what I'm doing and what I'm hearing. So, and I will say the SBA representatives, like if you call them up, they're the most helpful governmental entity I've ever talked to on the phone. I had to talk to the SBA one day, and the same afternoon talk to the IRS, and it was like, they could teach the IRS something about how to talk, explain things. It is a very difficult, it can be a sophisticated process that's hard, but I think the people that are there are willing to help people through the red tape, and so I've been happy with the process so far. That's it.
Very good. Thank you for that report and your willingness to help those in need following that disaster. All right. Tamim, thanks again for being with us tonight. Emery, I'm going to ask you to take care of C and D, if you would, please, ma'am. Okay, Mayor, I'm happy to. Next on the agenda is the authorization of the grant application for the NC Connect Bond Partif grant application. And Renee Jackson is here tonight, and she's been working, finalizing the grant application. It's due on December 1st, and we met today and reviewed everything, and if you all are still willing to authorize us to submit the grant application, we're ready to ship it on out of here, hopefully tomorrow. In the packet, or in the agenda review memo, I summarized what the total grant application amount is for, what we were asking for. And also included in your packet was the actual certification sheet. But the grant application, we would be asking for $198,720 from Partif, and that requires a 20% cash match, which calculates to be
$49,680. And in the memo, or in the agenda review, I recommended that you set a goal to raise $10,000. So of that 49,000, we would be tasked with trying to raise $10,000 in contributions from within the community that would be used to help with our cash match. And that is about a 10% cash match is what we did with the last Parteef grant when we did the playground so many years ago. I think we can be successful with that, especially with the universal design and the playground being inclusive. A lot of people are interested in seeing that happen. Councilman Biggs asked at the last meeting, where would the cash match come from? We would have to budget for that, and my recommendation would be that you would appropriate from reserves, and that appropriation would likely be part of your 2017-18 budget, depending on when we are notified. And by the time you get notified of the grant award, and then by the time they process all the contract agreements, it likely will be July of 2017. We're still getting feedback. The survey has been posted on Facebook. We're getting a lot of positive feedback, and we had just one negative comment. Somebody complained about the playground being in town, and why that people in the county always have to drive into town for services, and they like having the playground in the northern rec center, and that the town of Edenton people should drive up there and use that. So, but Renee, she always looks at things at the positive, and she said, this will prove to the grant funders that we got legitimate comments and concerns. So yeah.
So action item tonight would be to
authorize authorize the mayor to sign the grant application and submit the grant.
and declare the responsibility for the 20% match
Yes.
therein. Okay.
So moved, if you're
Second.
ready.
I'm ready. Second. All right, we have a motion and a second to submit everything necessary to get the universal design playground moving toward a funding, hopefully, and also commit ourselves to the 20% match as described. Any further questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Any opposed, no. All right, motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you for your hard work, Renee, on helping us move this thing along. Look forward to seeing it in place. It was amazing. The bulk of the cost is pouring a new path, right?
Yes,
Big dollars in there.
it lasts a very long time.
Yeah.
It's, the mulch was a quarter of that price,
Mm,
just to do mulch, and that's temporary.
yeah.
We get a flood or a rain and it's gone, so.
What's the age of
it's
this
a long run
service?
on maintenance.
This, I think, was in the early 2000s. Was it before Isabel?
Yeah, it's about 12 years,
About
13 years.
12 or
old.
13
That
years.
is, okay.
Yeah, and it has, I think, a 10-year lifespan.
Yeah,
so
and that's in sections. This is a solid pour, right?
Yes,
Okay.
those last about 10 years, and they start to work and separate, and are hard for wheelchairs and walkers and crutches to move around on with the seams splitting and that sort of thing.
Okay.
What will we do with this padding out here? Is that just something you throw away, or is it something you can recycle, or?
I'm not sure if it can be, we talked about recycling it because it is better. In some areas have nothing, but that's something we talked about rather than paying the contractor that to haul off, that it can be done in-house. And probably can be recycled, I would think. Tires can be made out of a similar material.
Okay. Very good. Thanks again for your contributions to the effort. Next item, please, ma'am. The airport lease.
Yes, and we have with us tonight, our town attorney, Hood Ellis, is here. Hood, thanks for joining us. And also our airport commission chairman, Jim Callback, our vice chairman, Chuck Schmealer, and then the airport manager, Harry Davis. So your team is present and in place. Mayor and council, I have been trying my best to keep you briefed via the weekly management report on the progress of this lease agreement. This is the agreement that we have with NCDOT to lease space at the airport terminal building. It has been a very long and difficult negotiation. Things were moving along up until about June. We were making very good progress. We negotiated in good faith with DOT, and they received input and advice from a representative of the Department of Administration's Office of State Properties. And when the final document went to be reviewed and placed on the Council of State agenda for action, the person who had been our contact in that department retired, so her boss had to review and become acclimated with the lease and the negotiations, and he basically blew up what had been agreed to and put forth after several months of us trying to get a response from him. But he basically has put forth or he has communicated, we have not received anything official, but he has communicated via an email terms that he would support and could defend at the Council of State office. You've seen those numbers. It's based a value. We put a value on the numbers, and it's a 20-year lease is what he's proposing because the prior or the existing lease was 20 years. What we had negotiated with DOT was a 15-year lease because we were told that all new leases can only be 15 years. So it's not quite apples to apples, but it's a significant amount of revenue for the town. The spreadsheet that I included in your packet shows the difference in where we were versus where this state properties office fella is. And now we're at really a standstill because unbeknownst to me, I did not know that Department of Insurance is now required to inspect any offices that are going to be leased by the state prior to the lease agreement going to the Council of State, which makes perfect sense. But we didn't know that. That wasn't in place when we did this lease 20 years ago. But on top of that, the Department of Administration was notified by the state auditor's office that an anonymous complaint had been made to the state auditor's office about a potential, it was called life health issue in the building, and it was a complaint about moisture. So that triggered Department of Insurance to not only do their normal inspection of the facilities, but also investigate the moisture issue, which I don't know how Department of Insurance is going to investigate that. You would think that would fall under Department of Labor or some other department, but we're patiently waiting for the Department of Insurance inspectors. We were told around November 10th that they would be here within 30 days. As of today, they have not made their presence known. So we hope that inspection happens within the 30 days and that there are no issues, other issues uncovered. And then we want to, the Airport Commission wanted to ask the council, where do we go next? Do you want us to continue to push for better terms, try to get a counter offer from the offer that Mr. name is Webb, it's, no secret, John Webb has put forth. Do you want to just say, you know what, let's just go with what he's offered? Or, do you want to say, hey, we don't want to deal with this anymore? I hope you don't say that, because there's a lot of value in the lease, but, that is an option. It's just saying, terminate the lease. You don't have a lease. We have an opinion from the town attorney that the lease terminated, and, we could look elsewhere for tenants, but that would be a long, hard look.
Isn't there, are they paying the rent?
They are not.
It seems that they owe us a considerable sum,
They do.
which to us is quite important.
And you're exactly right.
How are they responding to paying what they owe?
That they're paying leases, paying monthly rates on 2 small lease spaces. But the significant lease, the significant amount of money that they owe us, they have said as in part of the negotiations, will be paid when, one time they said when the council of state approved the new lease. And then we've also been told that he was investigating whether or not that could be paid now or has to be tied to the new lease. So we are working on preparing new invoices, because each month that passes, more in
It
arrears
accumulates.
they become.
Are they denying owing it?
No, they've not denied owing it at all.
Then why don't they pay it? I mean, it's...
Yeah, I mean, that's, something that we can pursue.
Well, I know you have. I'm not being critical of
understand.
you or the process, but it just seems, I mean, they're not paying, they have a place, they're occupying, and have over a period of time while this is going forward, no income, well, except for the 2.
Minor, small.
It's accumulated and will continue to. We need it more than the state. You could quote me on that.
One other thing in this process, because like these gentlemen that have sat back here and Anne Marie, we've been, again, having to hear about this for quite a while now. But it's my understanding, and I might have to refer to Hood on this, that anytime you're dealing with the FAA, then you have to charge whatever the going rate is in the area. You just can't say, okay, we like the state being there now with the FAA. We like the state being there, so we're going to charge them $2 a foot. And then we have another building that we charge $5 a foot. You can't, am I correct in saying that with the FAA?
Defer to them.
Okay, I know Jim has really worked on this, so got it, fair market value. So,
Well, that's fair.
and in this particular case, unfortunately, because of the building, the age, and all this other stuff, I don't know what real fair market value would be. But it sure isn't what this Jim Webb or John Webb, I kind of like it when I'm reading
Mr.
these letters.
Webb.
I like reading these letters, Dear John. So, there's some of that that's got to be taken in consideration also. And I don't think he really understands that. He still thinks he's got a lease, and the lease expired last December.
Well, I don't think he looks at it as a lease if he's not paying.
Couldn't agree more.
The moisture problem that has been brought up, do we know what that's all about?
We don't. We've pursued that. Jennifer, do you want to speak briefly about what you've been trying to hunt down?
Yeah, I talked with David King, and he is head of the investigative unit for the state auditor's office. And he is looking more into the report that was filed. He notified me that in the report it was only the DOT that was mentioned. The town was not mentioned, so that's why we did not get a copy of the report. So he's going to look more into that and then get back with me and advise what we should do, you know, if anything, where we should go from here to fix that problem.
But the question is, do we know what the problem is? You said fix the problem, Jennifer, but do we know what the problem is? In the filing of the report, did they specify what the moisture problem is?
No, we don't have a copy of the report, so he's looking into that so that hopefully, he can give us a copy of the report. We should have had a copy of it since we own the building, but, that just got, I guess, overlooked by his staff, so that's why he's looking into it personally.
Jim? Jeff?
If I may, I'd like to commend working with Mrs. Knighton. It's been a real shalom. When she first heard of this anonymous complaint flying over the transom, Mrs. Knighton asked for a copy of it and was told you can't have one. Now, I would like someone to explain to me how you're supposed to fix a problem when they won't tell you what the problem is.
Absolutely.
This is another negotiating ploy. This whole thing has been bad faith from beginning to end. And at some point, you need to give us some guidance. I think we should journey to Raleigh and talk to Mr. Webb and his boss, and then report back to you, because we're not getting, this is going on for a year. And, you know, $100,000 in Raleigh isn't even rounding out. Here, it's important.
Back to Steve's question about fair market value. The proposed lease you all negotiated for the 15-year term directly with DOT, that was based on fair market value, was it not?
Correct. Well, as best we could determine.
As best you,
And,
and what they came back with is clearly below that by,
well, and they're playing with the numbers, too.
right.
They tell Mrs. Knighton you can't have more than a 15-year lease, and they come up with a 20, which dilutes the numbers, and then, well, because this is, you're looking for cover. They let this lease expire. That's what the real problem is. And they came up with a profit. Y'all accepted. And then this lady retired, and it went up to Mr. Webb. And he said he'd never seen anything so crazy. And it's not crazy. It's a straightforward lease.
Yeah.
And the FAA requirement is pretty simple. And we're not talking about old buildings, new buildings, parking, nothing. They provide North Carolina with in excess of 95% of aviation-related funds. And they're pretty good about it. But one of their things is, if you want to lease a corner of the airport to whatever is going there, non-aviation related, you must charge fair market value. The particular sticking point, this is a piece of land. Mr. Webb thinks it's a cow pasture or a soybean field. It's not, it's part of the ramp. It's been improved to support the weight of heavy aircraft. I think there's a picture of one in your handout. And it's not the lowest use, it's improved use. And I asked Mrs. Knighton, she doesn't have the answer, I guess nobody does. Is Mr. Webb a certified North Carolina appraiser? Because he made the statement, I've been doing this for 30 years, I know what stuff is worth. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't.
Well, given the fact that the FAA in its
We can lose
guidelines,
the funding if we don't do it.
Yeah.
That's real simple.
I mean, if they're saying you negotiate within the parameters of fair market value, and I just did the per year on these two leases. The 15-year one is almost $60,000 a year. The 20-year one is $42,000 a year. I mean,
That's why I said they're playing with the numbers.
yeah. So I would be satisfied. Yeah, you can have the 20 years, but we
We'll go
need
with 15.
$50,000 a year. You know, if you want to strike a compromise, I mean, between the 42 and the 59, you have not yet had a conversation based on the dollars involved with the lease.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think, I agree with sending the delegation forward. have a conversation. Sambo, you a legal man, you got your thoughts on it?
I mean,
Good?
Well, I mean, again, as far as the big lease we're talking about, our legal position is you don't have a lease,
Yeah,
all right? And if we stick with that position, then they don't, that's a zero. And they have offered what they consider to be the fair market value. And we've, again, put what we think is fair market value, so you're somewhere between a lease and no lease, and what they're gonna pay for. And that's the discussion, I think, that it needs to, that Jim and Chuck and Harry want to have with the folks involved.
but it almost sounds as though the state of North Carolina is not fully aware of all this, in that they have a Department of Transportation that's completely happy as Division One in that space, are they not? I mean, if we can get the mold thing worked out, I mean, that, and, going back to covering the CYA, that seems to almost have taken precedent over the fact, I mean, does the state know that their Department of Transportation agreed to a 15-year lease at X number of dollars, only to be superseded by a guy in the administrative department who doesn't think that's the best thing, and therefore pushes it below fair market value, which the FAA wants you to adhere to? That there are too many wrong things in their position from my vantage point. I don't know where to start with the.
And as we've talked about it before, we need to just find a way to either get with Mr. Webb and his boss, as Steve has said, in the same room, or get around him, to have a conversation with somebody else who can say something besides no.
I think this has gone beyond Mr. Webb from everything that we have talked about for the last, especially the last 6 months or so, trying to get it on the Council of State. And
Trying to get it on what,
the
Steve?
Council of State for them to vote on. All of, every lease has to be voted on by them. So I made a suggestion the other day, the meeting, that, if Mr. Webb, doesn't want to play nice, then the best thing, everybody's got a boss, especially in government.
Yeah.
And the best thing to do is go to Mr. Webb's boss and say, look, okay, bygones, but let's move this forward. And if we have to take Steve King, who's the governor's eastern representative, or, whomever we need to take, we need to get in the room with his boss, because I don't think he really is negotiating fairly.
Yeah.
He's
agree with that theory.
made his stance, and he's put his foot down, and he don't want to move it at all. I think it's what we really all feel like.
Well, we had an end run working, and then the hurricane came along. And that took the governor completely out of his office. We had pretty good contact in there at one time. And that got put as it should have been. I mean, a lot more critical items. But still, someone is ahead of Mr. Webb, regardless of where the governor was or who the next one is. I like that plan. Just load up and go. Yes, sir.
If I may.
Surely.
We have more than just an ideological difference with Mr. Webb. This fella doesn't want to help us at all. I mean, I've watched this unfurl now for the last 12 months, and he basically has stopped it at his desk, and someday he may get to it, and someday he may not. Because number one, he doesn't believe that they owe us a dime other than the back rent on the one lease. But the major part of the building, he doesn't believe we owe him a dime, that they have a valid lease for another 20 years. And he has refused phone calls from Anne Marie. He's refused visits. He's unresponsive. So if we go to see his boss, Walton, I believe is his name.
Yes.
Then we have to understand that we're going to have a hostile environment there, because his boss, if he's any kind of boss, is not going to see us without him present. And he will certainly have upbriefed his boss at the time we get there. Now, I think that's a good and balanced step to take. But I believe if you're gonna send somebody up there to do this, you need to tell whoever you're gonna send up there what their clearance limit is. In other words, how low will you go? And if you're not willing to go any lower than that, what can they say will happen next if the deal is refused? Because we're down to that point now. And if the answer to that is, well, they can just stay there for the next 20 years on the same terms that we've had, then that's fine. But whoever you send up there needs to know how low they can go, and if they will not deal on that basis, that they're gonna have to find another home. And the reason they're not paying the $100,000, Mr. Quinn, is not because they don't think they owe it. It's because they're using that as leverage to stay in there for free for the next 20 years. It's really quite simple.
Now, they say they have a legal opinion from the Attorney General's office.
That's all plastic.
We haven't asked for it.
Yeah.
I think it's a negotiating tactic. The Attorney General, as most people know, has been occupied with other things. Mr. Ellis gave us a pretty detailed legal opinion on the whole situation here. It's in your packet, read it over. And I think we need to go forward, as Chuck said, on that basis. We need to have it out one way or another. Because if that old lease is valid, whether or not they said they would move forward with it, they stay there for 20 years for free. And I know if it was my building, we'd have to work something out, or you need to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And by the way, this insurance business and the auditors and the
Yeah,
air
it's
quality
nonsense.
test, that's all ancillary to what we're talking
I
about.
agree.
I mean, if those tests come back and they say the structure is not habitable, all leases have an out, because you can't use the property. So that's interesting, but it doesn't really go to the point that we've been talking about for a year, and that is, you don't have a lease any further, we want paid for you to stay in the property, and what can we work out as far as the rent? Now, the first proffer that we got when I sat over there months and months ago was on a state form that said, this is what we're willing to pay, please have this approved or disapproved by your governing body, and then we'll go from there and take it to the council of state. Don't be surprised if it changes. What we've got now, this second go-round, is nothing. It's just some stuff that this guy told Anthony Roper from the Department of Transportation, and he put in columnar form for us. We don't even have a second deal. So you get up there to Mr. Walton's office, you don't know what's gonna happen. So we need to know how low will you go. We need to have a clearance limit before you send somebody up there to try and work this out. We've taken it as far as we can, I think, is what we're trying to tell you. And we're not the town council. We're not in a position, we have no authority to make that kind of decision.
I think the mayor nailed it just a few minutes ago. You're at a certain price here and a certain price here. In between, tell them $50,000 a year and stick to our guns. Just, again, one man's opinion, but we gotta have, you're right, we gotta have something that we can say, this is where we're gonna be. Now, we might come back here and go, might have to rethink, but, I think we've gotta have something that, like you just said, that's.
Can't continue to let them say that.
We can't.
Not paying any rent.
I mean, we did that for 20 years based on them, fixing, doing some things at the building and all that, but we can't.
I'd like to see the work product of this meeting should be a memorandum of agreement over Walton's signature and whoever you send up there to negotiate this. It says, this is what we've agreed to in this meeting, subject to the governing bodies of both sides approving it. In their case would be the Council of State, in our case would be the Town Council of Edenton. That's what should come out of this. That's how things like this are handled in the business world.
Hood, what is your take on this? I mean, from a legal standpoint, how do you think?
Our position is there's no lease.
I understand that.
And their position is, we got a 20-year lease. We didn't have to give you any notice, and it's a 20-year lease for free. So, I mean,
And they wrote the lease.
you
And they wrote the lease.
yeah, you got a big difference. I mean, you know, they're at $847,000 for 20 years, and we're at $895 for 15 years.
Yeah.
That's really not a whole lot of, there's a lot more distance between no lease and that first 800 threshold than there is between the two figures on the end.
Yeah.
So that's why we don't want to, I mean, the fact that they're willing to say, okay, we say we got a lease, but we'll still pay you $847,000. That's not anything to sneeze at. I mean, I don't see that we get our business out of whack. I'd hate for that to disappear because they're a good tenant, and that's pretty darn close to our number. But, you know, what these guys are asking is fair, is that if you're gonna negotiate, they need to know, you know, do you wanna just take their number, be done with it? Or do you wanna go back and, you know, if they're not gonna accept our number, then what do you wanna send them back with?
Do you call into question that one of the departments of the state of North Carolina, under its authority, I guess, authorized the 15-year term?
But that's not in the form of a proffer. That's somebody right there. If you look at, it's in your packet. We had no formal offer of that.
No.
Now, we can go up there and say that's a.
You don't have no formal offer on the what? The 20?
On the second one.
On the second
20?
15-year, what, 840 something?
847.
Yeah.
I'd hasten to point out there's a $350,000 difference between the first proffer that they gave us on the state form and this so-called second proffer. $350,000 is a lot of money,
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
where I come from.
Was that entailing the period of time?
Yeah,
Or-
it was $895 for 15 years
Right.
versus $847 for 20 years. There's a $350,000 difference.
Yeah.
Less
They're-
money,
they're
more
cooked
years.
to books.
They dropped the annual. There's also the question of the money they owe, that we say they owe. I think they've admitted the fact they owe it.
We're
Do
still
we have
looking
proof
for
of
the
that?
Do we have, I don't know that I have anything in writing on that, but I've been told by John Webb and by DOT that they agreed to pay that. And Hood gave us an opinion that they're obligated to pay us that. Now, Jennifer had a good idea. She said, well, you should call the state auditor's office and complain that DOT hasn't paid their rent.
Sounds like a good idea.
That $100,000 is another line item in that memorandum of agreement that I talked about that you'll want to walk out of that office with. That has to be one of those line
Yeah.
items.
Cured. All right, we need the lowball number. I'm with Hood. I mean, we won't find, I'll ask our commission members to comment on my statement. I don't think we'll find a better long-term tenant than the state of North Carolina with its highway division. I mean, that's, when we redid that airport out there, one of our goals was to try to attract a state agency to be at least the lead tenant. And in this case, we were successful. And I don't think there's anybody in this town or county that would want to lose that
No.
division office from, yes, sir.
I will help you with that. I just want to point out that that division office up there takes care of the roads. And we take care of downstairs the airport. Both of those divisions, the Division of Aviation and Division of Highways, are part of the Division of Transportation. So the two are related in the same way that I believe they're holding back our $100,000, you know, to make a deal on the space upstairs. We can't lose sight of the fact that not only might it be difficult for us to find a replacement tenant, our benefactor, if you will, and our tenant are cousins. So it's a very touchy situation, it has to be handled very delicately. I believe that the Department of Transportation, the Road Division, has lost control of this transaction. That it's been shuffled over to this administration, Department of Administration, and the Leasing Division, which is where I think apparently by regulatory authority it goes. So I think that our folks out there, our tenants on the ground, are sympathetic to us and want to work with us, but they've hit a stone wall up there just like we have.
And just to add a little bit to that, you know, it is a central location for Division One. I mean, it couldn't be any more central for them. So they, not only are they good tenants, they like being there.
Well, I'd like to offer up an idea that we put together, the travel team would be, I'll just start, y'all can add and subtract. The travel team would be our town attorney, the chairman of the airport commission, our town manager, and perhaps Steve as our liaison from the town council. I'd be comfortable with that group going.
And I would add Chuck, because he's had a lifetime experience with this
Fine.
stuff.
But I agree. I mean, that's incumbent upon us to put together the team. It's obvious we're not going to get anything done over the phone or email.
I agree.
Or letter.
There, you said the attorney, the town manager, Chuck, the airport authority chairman, and who else?
Steve.
Steve.
He's been liaison out there ever since we've been here.
One thing, this is sort of offline with where the conversation is right now. But it sounds like they are pulling every key that they can possibly pull to affect the outcome of the lease. For example, this argument about the building not being or having the moisture problem, and we don't have a copy of the complaint. But in any kind of negotiation, I'm assuming they'll bring up that kind of thing, everything they can to stopgap a legitimate presentation from our group. Would it not be feasible that we have the building looked at by an inspector of our own to make that judgment?
Has that even been brought up in the negotiations?
Y'all looked at it.
We have.
Chief, it's in your packet. The town in-house has looked at it.
We looked at the inspection that the fire chief and the building inspector did was life safety code. They did not look at the moisture issue. Now,
And that's because we didn't know where it was.
well,
And still
we,
don't.
Well, just to prove that there isn't one. That's what I'm after.
Well,
what
the
we,
question is, have they, in your negotiations, has that been a part of
no.
the problem?
No.
It just came up.
I do.
No, but I'm saying, when you go there to have that, anything they've got under the table, they're gonna bring up. And I think it would be appropriate that we have an answer to that, whether it's in there now or not to bring it up, but to have it.
Yeah, DOT has taken some sort of samples, right after Hurricane Matthew, when all of the roof leaks had been repaired. We had roof leaks, we acknowledged, I gave them dates of when we were informed, when we immediately called a contractor, when we had them repaired, and then we waited until, normally you don't repair interior damage until a couple more rainstorms to make sure that you got all the leaks. And so we did not have any more evidence of leaks after Hurricane Matthew. So then we went in and repaired all the, took out the ceiling tiles. DOT, in the meantime, took some sort of samples to measure mold, and those reports came back that there were low concentrations, but it was not in the work areas where people worked. It was, I can't say off the top of my head where it was, but DOT sent me a copy of those reports, and then evidently they have hired a firm to do the same type of testing, and that was done the same day that chief and the building inspector performed their investigation, their inspection. So they're waiting for a report as to whether or not they find evidence of any mold in the building, which they very well could, and then, then we have to determine where is it, how do we abate it and all that, so.
But once again, they won't share what the problem is. And I don't know how you fix something where you don't know what the problem is. If I was sitting there negotiating with them, I said, well, tell us what the problem is and we'll fix it. We've already proved we do that.
Well, it's amazing to me that, a complaint is made to the state auditor's office and nothing comes to us.
It doesn't
DOT
make
was not
sense.
notified. The people are still working in that building. So I don't know how much credibility you give a complaint like that.
At the very least,
yeah.
it's a lack of due process.
And I'm going back to what Chuck said a few minutes ago. They have an out clause for that kind of stuff, and we're getting into weeds on something other than renegotiating the lease. And that'll take care of itself in due time. The pending problem is not having been paid for whatever period of time that it is, $100,000 in arrears, and no lease going forward. And that's what we need to address and let the mold take care of itself.
I might add there, these peripheral maintenance issues, my contention has been all along, I own a lot of rental real estate, I won't kid you. It's very difficult to take care of it if you have no cash flow. So if tenants say, look, I've paid my rent in full, I've paid it when it was due or beforehand,
Good point.
and, you're not fixing my problem, well, they have a pretty legitimate complaint. But when you're not paying anything, especially to a franchise municipality, and you're expecting the good taxpayers to cough up the money to take care of their shortfall because they won't pay their rent. I mean, there's just something smelly about that whole
Yeah.
thing, it doesn't comport right to me.
The state will write us up in our budget review because we're not generating enough income, and they won't pay us the damn rent.
They won't pay what they owe. Good line. That's very good. Very good.
I said to the Division of Aviation one time, we were complaining that we were struggling to get the grant match together to do some of the work out at the airport. Well, why don't you have the money? Don't ask me that. Why don't you have the money? I said, I'll tell you why we don't have the money, because you won't pay any rent. Your cousin won't pay any rent. That's why we don't have any money.
Well, that's a good answer.
Yeah, well, someone mentioned a few moments ago to go, when the group goes up there to negotiate, that they need to have a bottom line figure.
Yeah.
So, Mayor, I agree with what you had said earlier to split it down the middle, if that being the bottom line. Is that feasible, or is that?
Well, I think we probably ought to huddle on that, because Hood expressed interest in the deal that they offered. Wasn't bad. They paid us $100,000 in arrears. I mean,
That's what's worrying me.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a whole lot better than them walking on this thing. I mean, that'd be a disaster.
Yeah. We're in a tenuous
Yeah.
position. But there's a fair amount of embarrassment involved with a state agency not paying the rent.
But they don't say they owe you nothing. I mean, that's what,
Yeah.
We do on one of these.
yeah,
They acknowledge.
yeah.
Yeah.
While he's still there.
Right away.
Yeah.
We don't know who to call.
You do at this point.
All right, well, let's walk away with something firm here. Can we settle on a team? That would be Hood and Jim and Chuck and Steve and Anne Marie. That sound conclusive enough without
Good
being,
team to me. I'd hate to be on the other side of those negotiations.
yeah, without being too
You
big.
need a motion on that?
That'd be fine. Well, can I just appoint? Is that within my
Either way, sure.
purview? But yeah, we would take a motion, that'd be fine.
Then I make the motion that we support the team that the mayor has called for, which is our town attorney, our town manager, Chuck, airport authority chairman, and Steve.
That's second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? All right. And
And I like Sambo, I wouldn't want to be on the other side of that.
I think that's what we can walk away with right now and empower or instruct rather our town manager to get the group together, work on times to go, talk about bottom line of what will be accepted. Is that something that we feel like we need to vote on? Or do we entrust that to
I
the...
entrust that to the committee.
I'd say trust it to the
Yeah.
group.
I agree.
And I appreciate that, Mayor, because I'd hate for it to be on that camera and some.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I agree.
Any other questions about... Does that sound like a good plan? I mean, we can start that process pretty
Yeah,
quickly,
I
right?
was just, the only thing I'd tweak it with is, we give some thought on who we wanna meet with.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully we'll have an option other than the one name we
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah.
Although he may be a participant.
So that, in effect, too, would then have something to do, obviously, with when you go. If you can't see the right person, we might have to wait a little while longer. I know everybody's anxious to get this resolved. Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure I heard you right. So you're telling us that we have the authority to go up and make the best deal we can? Is that what we're saying? Okay, just so I understand it, I'm happy to do that as long as we know what our clearance limit is.
But then the council has to approve that.
Of course,
Yeah.
the memorandum of agreement should say that from their side, the council of state's got to approve it, and then we'll bring it back to our town council.
Just sending y'all out a big bring back prize.
Yeah.
Mayor, can I just make one last point?
Sure.
I know that we're gonna get pushback, that they're not gonna want to meet Walton, who is John Webb's boss, is not gonna wanna meet until they get that Department of Insurance inspection. So I think we probably ought to, let them know that we're preparing, we want some dates, and when is this Department of Insurance inspection gonna take place, and we wanna be up there right after that report is made available. Does that?
Good point.
Who do you address that to?
When we decide who we're gonna request the meeting, yeah.
I think that's a very important aspect.
Yeah, to have that answer, as you suggest. So, has anybody got a best guess on when the insurance people will show up and do their thing? We don't know.
We don't know. I was told it would be 30 days, within 30 days from November 10th. So I think it'll be either this week or next week if they hold to that schedule.
We need to remind them
And we got a new insurance commissioner as well, so.
that there are only 10 days left, 11 days left. Okay.
I would suggest that we ask for the meeting, and I'm presuming that Walton's gonna be the guy. And, you know, Webb needs to know what we're doing, we're not trying to go behind his back. And let Walton say to us, I don't wanna do this with you until the insurance report is back. Because then we have on record that he's gonna be the guy we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think it's better if they'll do it, to get the lease straightened out, because if the insurance thing comes back, it's an uninhabitable building, what do they call old buildings?
Old building syndrome, yeah.
Well, that
I'm very
covers
familiar
most of
with
the
it.
lower part of town. Old buildings.
That happened to me over at my house.
I was just gonna say.
Took me down.
Mine too.
I'm very familiar with it.
Okay, all right, are we good with that?
Yes, sir.
Let's try and get it done,
Yes.
on parallel tracks.
All right, thank everyone again for working hard with a difficult situation. Doesn't seem like it should be, but it is.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we into committee meetings. Administrative, we have 2 items. I'll turn that over to Councilman Biggs, please, sir.
Mayor, the first item that we have tonight is pertaining to docking policies, and while we were talking about docking policies, or how this came up was, I had some people that are down at the dock quite a bit, that mentioned to me that, you know, when boats come in, that, you know, we don't help or can't help because, you know, we had an employee that got a sprained arm, shoulder, whatever it was, and we couldn't even grab a line anymore. Well, I know most of y'all have been around boats, and when that wind is blowing out there, even though you're inside of this harbor, it's really tough. If you got a large scale boat that,
If you got a small boat.
yeah, well, large scale too. But it's really difficult for somebody to, especially if they're by themselves. Now, most of the time they're not, but even if there's 2 on there, someone trying to be a fore and after both and wrapping lines is tough. Whereas if you got just somebody standing there on the dock itself holding the line for you, just makes, I mean, if all they do is take the line and wrap around one loop just to hold the boat one way or the other. Mark and I were talking, he runs over every chance he gets when a boat's coming in, and tries to help them. I've heard Jim Baker say when he's down here, if one's coming in, if he sees it coming in or whatever, he stays and tries to help. But, you know, they're not here all the time. And we do have someone on the staff, and I know Anne Marie has, you know, surveyed some of the surrounding areas, and, but, you know, they don't allow their employees to do it. But I think it sends a bad signal to me that we have someone standing on the dock and somebody needs help and they can't get it. They have to, you know, do all the time. And I understand, I don't want to tie someone else's boat up either. I'll hold that line as long as it takes for them to get their other lines like they want them. But I mean, I know we've got that policy in place, but I asked Anne Marie to put it, you know, on the administrative committee so we could talk about it. You know, if we could send employees or have someone train them, not send them somewhere, but have someone train them on exactly how to just loop the line around the piling just to hold it enough till the owner or occupant can get off the vessel and tie it up themselves. Again, I'd rather not see them out there than to see them out there and
Not doing it.
not be able to grab a line. You know, I'd rather for them to wait and let the people come into the office if that's what, you know, we decide to do. But, that's the reason it's out here, is just for full discussion to see what everybody thought.
Unfortunately, and I'm not on that committee, but
Yep, sir.
unfortunately, it's one of those damned if you do and damned if you don't situations. You know, if you do have somebody to help, and they get hurt, you got insurance problems. If you do something to help mess up somebody's boat or something, this dude's that owns the boat's gonna sue you. So it's, but like I say, unfortunately, it's a damned if you do and damned if you don't. And I don't know the answer, don't claim to know.
Right, sir. And again, I don't know the answer, but I do know it doesn't look good for us to have somebody stand out on that pier.
I agree with that, but then,
And-
the league, according to what Emery said in here, the league of municipalities has advised against it.
Well, they recommended, but they, if you change the policy, they're still going to insure us.
Right.
I mean, they're not gonna change it.
I agree, it's a tough thing to be standing there looking at them and
Yeah,
not help.
If that's happening, that's not right, and we spent a lot of time coaching and
Trying to get
trying
them
to
to do that.
teach the staff about the new policy, and so that they wouldn't be put in that position of just saying, can't help you, So if that, I mean, that's on us to continue to reinforce, you give them the welcome bag when they are all tied up and docked and off the ramp, or off the pier. But it was a difficult policy decision, and we did the best that we could. We surveyed other jurisdictions, we talked to the insurance, and we took input from the staff. And they weren't happy, one of them in particular was not happy at all about it. Thought that it was going to send the wrong message, that it would turn some boaters would turn away. We get a lot of we do surveys, we get feedback. We try to give every boater who stays with us an evaluation form so that we can learn from it. And we always hear great things about how polite and friendly and helpful the
And
staff
that's good.
is. And since this change, I did get a complaint. Somebody wrote on that they thought it was ridiculous, that policy. They've never heard of such a thing. And I reached out to them. I sent them an email to try and get more, feedback and to explain to them what prompted the change, but they never responded. They didn't respond back. But, we started thinking about the potential hazard, the potential dangers. Councilman Biggs reminded me that, our people do a lot of hazardous work all the time, and we just have to make sure that they're trained as best, to the highest level, and that we continue to give them the training and give them the equipment and the knowledge.
And I realize it can go from one extreme to the other, but again, when you got a northeast wind blowing out there and you're trying to dock on this side and, it's blowing 15 knots and you don't have somebody there to help you just lasso the line real quick, it can put you in a bind with a large vessel.
Well, that's a safety problem right there.
Right.
To the individual, the boat, and the dock.
And honestly, when we were debating the policy, I think we thought that, and Fire Chief helped me out on this, that saying we can only handle the ropes, no hands on boats, that would be a reasonable, safe policy. But then how do you coach, how do you train, how do you tell that employee, that's all that you can do, because their tendency is going to be to want to do more. So that's why I think we went the way that the other...
Well, it's important to have it in the policy regardless of what that attendant does. I hate to sound like that, but you understand.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
So the policy, whatever we write, would say that, and that's the way it should.
You're only allowed to touch the lines or handle the line or however you want to.
Well, we can say handle the line.
Right. Well, I mean, in the
under the broad heading of common courtesy, until and unless the insurance company drops coverage for anybody doing those kinds of activities on our waterfront, and if we want to present ourselves as a harbor that people enjoy visiting, then we got to figure out a way to let people help. I mean, it's all about insurance, right? It's safety.
Well, safety.
Yeah.
It's more safety.
Yeah, you can.
Well, and to add to that, part of what Anne Marie wanted to change in the procedure part of this was, you know, having an off-season rate if we have to do a, excuse me, a lottery or whatever to allow, you know, locals to type, because we don't, you know, from November 1st to mid-spring, we're not going to get a lot of transits. We'll get the people coming from Columbia maybe once in a while that crew or from Albemarle Plantation. Some of them come over and spend a day or so.
So Columbia, yeah.
Yeah, and she'd like to have some way of also having people so that they can just tie it down here in the winter months. People do love to come downtown and see boats. I mean, when they're here, they like to walk out there and see boats, and it's I mean, when I go to Beaufort or Moorhead or wherever, or I'm just riding to the beach, a lot of times I'll stop in at Pirates Cove and just walk around and check the boats out. I know I'm a fanatic, but
I mean, is it even worth it to, well, I saw the
That's
amount of
also
revenue, is
private
it even
versus
worth it to even
public.
have any revenue, you know, for the time they spend here and the few days they pay, it looks like a very minimal amount by the time you take it in, process it, you know, might be like the electricity plugging into the thing, it's not worth the effort.
I think for the off-season rate, is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about? For the off-season? You know, if we could come up, what my concern is, there are two things. One, Councilman Biggs is mentioning having more places for the day trippers to tie up. And we think we can get a permit to add a small type of pier for that. And that's great news. And if you want us to pursue that, we can get some cost estimates. We might be able to apply for a grant with Cameron to pay for that. The second thing, the problem with our current off-season policy is that boaters are leaving Edenton Marina. They're giving up their monthly slip over there, so that means Edenton Marina is not getting the revenue that they normally would get, and they're coming down here because it's cheaper. And I think when you all established the policy, it was set up, we thought, with terms that would allow people to still, we never thought people would give up their slip for 5 or 6 months and come down here. And that is causing.
Well, I thought you signed a year, I mean, I think we probably all thought
We
you
all thought they
signed
signed a year lease, but they're all on, no, it's month to month. So one idea is, because you've always said you never wanted, you used grant money.
Yeah.
You never wanted that
To compete.
marina
I
to
agree with
compete
that.
with the other marinas. So one option is that if you want to come down here and stay in the off-season for an extended period of time, more than whatever our regular policy allows, and you are a resident of Chowan County, or you own property in Chowan County, because that has come up, you can do that, but you have to show us a valid paid lease from either Edenton Marina or Wharf Landing, and then charge them, $10 a month for the utilities.
So reduce it.
We would
From
reduce
50.
it, but they're going to have to pay.
Yeah.
They're going to have to pay
I think
their rate. Yeah.
So why would a boater want to do that?
For the
Some of them
convenience.
still might want to do
So they
it.
can walk downtown with a boat, I think.
Some of them may not. Some of them may say, well, if I have to pay extra, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, we can't give away electricity.
Right.
It's confusing because most marinas are private, and they can do whatever they want. But this place was built with state and federal dollars in addition to the local funding, so.
And it is better to have people in there, I agree with that, I mean, it looks better.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should do everything we can to encourage them to be here. I think your suggestion of, well, there are a lot of ins and outs with it, but basically to make it a minimal charge and have to show that they are currently birthed here. But is there any place that they could be outside of the two marinas? I just happened to think about that while I started to talk, but it's, the only way you can come here is $10 and a lease.
Yeah, somebody might want to bring the Chowan County resident might want to, I don't know who that is, might want to bring their boat down from Annapolis for 3 months, and they're not ever going to be.
Well,
yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's a funny kind of
That's a
stipulation.
narrow way to get in.
Yeah, like a private club.
Yeah.
Show me
Well, I think
your
we would charge them
genealogy.
more. We would, if you don't have a lease, I don't know, let me try and
Yeah,
work
yeah.
on it, and I
That's
hear
a
the
good
concerns.
I think the concept is a good concept. How to make it work is something else.
But as far as right now, everything that's down there, everything's good, and so we'll just, I'm assuming it's okay, and with whatever's happening, and maybe by the next meeting, we can solve this problem, and
The next committee meeting, have a draft, is that what you suggested?
that'll be fine,
Okay.
or if something pops up and you have a draft before then, we'll look
Okay.
at it at the regular meeting, but if not, and then gives everybody time, I guess, to think about what we're gonna do about handling lines,
About what?
handling lines for transients.
Woo.
Yeah. Okay, that's number one. If that's okay with you, Councilwoman Simpson, we'll.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Now, the next item we have is, we are having a problem with that four-legged friend of ours around here, the deer, out at the wastewater treatment plant. And Anne Marie has been asked if, they could, put in the same type program that we have at the airport. And that allows, if I'm not badly mistaken, town and county employees. Does it allow state employees
I
also?
think it does allow state also.
Okay. To help eradicate this problem. And if I'm not badly mistaken, they raise money and pay their own insurance and the whole works just in case. So we would certainly want them to do, as she placed here, the proposed model that we have at the airport. And it has worked, as far as I know, it has worked fine over the years. So if Councilwoman Simpson, if that's okay with you, I'd like to send that on, because if we wait, deer season's gonna be over December 31st. Then you won't be able to help this year's crop. That's all we have, Mayor.
All right. Let me get back to the agenda. We will now hear from our Public Works, chaired by Councilman Stallings, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We only have one item on our agenda tonight. And after our last meeting, where there was a lot of discussion about the debris and the trash and stuff stopping up our drainage pipes and all, several people have talked about, and I'm sure we've all seen where especially the professional yard mowers and
Blowers.
I'm sorry?
And blowers.
And blowers, they blow those leaves and the grass trimmings and all in the street. And once they blow them in the street, guess where they go? And I think we've all seen what a pile of wet leaves or wet grass will do, even in the gutters of the street. When they get in those pipes, you can only imagine what they will do and stop them up. So, I would like to recommend that we do a blitz on this thing and send all of the professional lawn care people a letter telling, and I believe, if I'm, correct me on this, Anne Marie, but I believe we already have a policy on that, we're just not enforcing it. But I think we need to send out a letter to all of these people and telling them that we do have an ordinance on it, and if we don't, we need to adopt one. And give them some time on that, and then start enforcing it. As Steve says, that's his one man's opinion.
Yeah, I would ask for help from the town attorney on the language. The way that I read the code, it infers that that is not allowed, but I think we can do a lot better job with the language, and maybe Hood can help us draft it, and then tie it back to a penalty, a misdemeanor, or however we enforce the code. And then I agree with you, a public information campaign for targeted at the contractors and also homeowners as well. That's a good idea.
So we need to send that to full council, or you gonna take it from there, or?
Do you think we can draft something by December 12th or 13th?
I mean, if you've got something in place, you just wanna make a few little changes, sure.
Okay.
Can we do it by fine? I hate to get a misdemeanor, take it to court.
Put green down on all the leaves.
Well, all of you heard the people complaining about what was happening in the gutters and the water backed up.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Oh, I agree. I mean,
If that's a joke, fine,
yeah.
that's a joke. But,
Yeah.
huh?
You're exactly right, we gotta do something.
No, I think I'm not minimizing the problem, but I guess we also need to consider that, are we gonna have town employees going on private property to collect what they now collect street side?
Well, you can
Well, we're
tag-
not talking about street side piles, are
No,
we?
we're not.
No.
We're talking about blowing
Yep.
this stuff out in the street so it gets
From
in
the lawn or?
Which you see all the time. I mean, you see people doing that all the
Yeah,
time.
they blow it out in the street with those leaf blowers, and then it washes into the what am I trying to say?
The storm, the catch basin.
Storm
Yeah.
drain.
But then a lot of times people put it on the street and it blows in the street.
Yeah.
But, an act of God.
Well, can't you just require the lawn maintenance company to put any refuse they create in a trash bag and haul it off when they're done?
But all those leaves,
Yeah. How else you go get rid of them?
A lot of them do that, Mayor. I think the more, the larger ones, but there are a lot of, small independent guys that, they're the ones that are causing the problem.
So they buy a bag,
Yeah.
charge
Or-
me an extra $1 to do the yard.
Well, the big problem I have is when they blow it out in the street.
They're just standing there doing that.
You see them all, as Sambo says, you see them all the time, taking that leaf blower and blowing it out in the street. And
You just want them to put it at the edge of the curb, on the
Right.
sidewalk side of, behind the curb. And that's what I need help with the language. How do you define where you want to put it? Because it has to be in a location where the town can pick it up.
we anxiously await your ordinance.
that's all we have there.
Good. All right.
Good.
I meant that in the context that completes the agenda.
Sure.
I'll take your word for that.
All right. done tonight. Thank you all for your participation, and we'll see you back here the 1st of December, or shortly thereafter. Meeting adjourned.